Maybe losing everything wasn't the tragedy you thought it was. Maybe it was the universe finally answering the prayer you forgot you made. If you're watching this right now, there's a reason. You've been feeling it, haven't you? That weight in your chest when you wake up. The sense that your entire life is unraveling, piece by piece, and no matter how hard you try to hold on, it keeps slipping through your fingers. The relationship that ended, the job that dissolved, the version of yourself you spent years building, suddenly gone, and in the silence that follows, there's this terrifying question. Who am I now? But here's what no one tells you about losing everything. It's not destruction. It's recalibration. The universe doesn't take things away to punish you. It clears space so the real you, the one you came here to be, can finally emerge. Right now, you're standing at the threshold of the most profound awakening of your life. And by the end of this video, I'm going to show you exactly why this moment of loss is actually the universe's most direct communication with your soul, and how to decode what it's trying to tell you. Stay with me until the end, because in the final section, I'm going to reveal the quantum shift that happens the moment you stop resisting what's falling apart, and how that single shift opens doorways you never knew existed. There's a specific frequency that loss carries. You might recognize it. It sounds like silence after years of noise. It feels like standing in an empty room that used to be full of your entire identity. And it whispers one question over and over. What now? If you're here, you know this frequency intimately. You've been through something that dismantled you. Maybe it was a breakup that didn't just end a relationship, but shattered the future you had mapped out. Maybe it was a career that vanished, taking with it the title you wore like armor. Maybe you moved to a new city, left behind everything familiar, and now you're standing in a life that feels like someone else's. Or maybe it's subtler than that. Maybe nothing dramatic happened at all, but you woke up one day and realized the person you've been pretending to be doesn't exist anymore. And here's what makes this so disorienting. You thought you were supposed to have it all figured out by now. You thought the spiritual path would make things easier, clearer, more stable. But instead, it feels like everything you built is crumbling. And the loneliness of it, that's the hardest part. Because how do you explain to someone that you're not just sad about what you lost? You're grieving a version of yourself that no longer fits. This is what we're going to explore together in this video, not from the shallow perspective of everything happens for a reason, motivational talk, but from the deep quantum truth of what's actually occurring in your consciousness right now. Because losing everything isn't a detour on your spiritual journey, it's the doorway. It's the initiation that most people avoid their entire lives, but you're walking straight through it. This channel exists as a bridge between the seen and unseen, between science and soul, between the you that's falling apart and the you that's being born. And if you felt like you don't belong anywhere else, like no one truly understands what you're experiencing, you're exactly where you need to be. So let's go deeper. Let's understand what's really happening beneath the surface of this loss. When everything in your external world falls apart, most people think something is wrong with them. They think they failed. They think they made a mistake, chose the wrong path, trusted the wrong person. But energetically, something completely different is happening. Your soul is shedding frequency. Think of it like this. Every relationship you've had, every job title, every role you played, every identity you wore, it all carried a specific energetic signature. And for a while, those signatures served you. They helped you navigate the world, feel safe, feel seen. But here's the thing about the journey of awakening. As your consciousness expands, as you begin to touch deeper layers of truth, those old frequencies start to feel tight, like clothing that no longer fits. Your soul begins to vibrate at a different rate, and suddenly, everything that matched the old you starts to create friction. This is why breakups happen right after you start meditating more. This is why jobs dissolve when you begin questioning your purpose. This is why friendships fade when you stop pretending. It's not coincidence, it's resonance. The universe operates on one fundamental principle: like attracts like. Your external reality is always a reflection of your internal frequency. So when you start shifting internally, when you start waking up to who you really are beneath all the conditioning, your outer world has no choice but to rearrange itself to match. And yes, it feels like loss. It feels like everything is being taken from you. But what's really happening is this: you're being freed. The universe is removing everything that was built on a version of you that no longer exists. And I know how painful that is. I know how terrifying it feels to watch your entire life dissolve and not know what's coming next. But here's what you need to understand on the deepest level. Your soul called this in. Not consciously, maybe. Not the part of you that's crying at 3 a.m, wondering how it all went wrong, but the part of you that exists beyond this dimension, the part that chose this life, the part that knows exactly why you're here. That part orchestrated this, because it knew. It knew you were ready to let go of the smaller story and step into the real one. Every ending is an energetic death, and just like in nature, death isn't the opposite of life, it's the passage into new life. When a tree loses its leaves, it's not dying. It's conserving energy, preparing for a new season, making space for new growth. You are that tree right now, and everything that's falling away, those are the leaves, the roots, the essence of who you are. Those are still here, stronger than ever, actually. So when you feel that ache, that emptiness, that who am I without all of this feeling? Pause, breathe, and recognize it for what it is, your soul expanding beyond the container it used to live in. You're not broken, you're not lost, you're molting, and on the other side of this uncomfortable, disorienting process, there's a version of you that's more aligned, more authentic, more alive than you've ever been. But to get there, you have to stop clinging to what's leaving. You have to trust the intelligence of this unraveling. And that brings us to the quantum perspective, because what's happening to you isn't just emotional or spiritual, it's literally restructuring the reality you're living in. Let's talk about what quantum physics has discovered that ancient mystics have known for thousands of years. Reality is not fixed, it's fluid, it's responsive, and it's being shaped moment by moment by the frequency of your consciousness. In quantum mechanics, there's a principle called superposition. It means that a particle exists in multiple states simultaneously until it's observed. The moment you observe it, the moment you place your attention on it, it collapses into one specific reality. Now translate that to your life. Right now, in this very moment, there are infinite versions of you existing across infinite timelines. There's a version of you still in that relationship, a version that stayed in that job, a version that never moved cities, never took the risk, never let go. But there's also a version of you that's wildly free, a version that's aligned with your soul's purpose, a version that's living in flow, in clarity, in deep peace and creative power. And here's the quantum truth that changes everything. You get to choose which version you collapse into reality. In quantum physics, there's a principle called superposition. It means that all possibilities exist simultaneously until the moment of observation, until consciousness collapses the wave into a single reality. You've probably heard about Schrödinger's cat, right? The cat that's both alive and dead until you open the box. That's not just a thought experiment. That's how reality actually works at the quantum level. And here's where it gets wild. Your life operates the same way. Right now, in this very moment, there are infinite versions of you existing across infinite timelines. There's a version of you still holding on to what you lost, replaying the past, wondering, what if? There's a version of you stuck in bitterness, in victimhood, in the story that life happened to you unfairly. But there's also a version of you, and this is the one I want you to feel into, There's a version of you that already integrated this loss. A version that already alchemized the pain into power. A version that looks back on this moment and says, that was the best thing that ever happened to me. That version of you already exists. Not in the future. Right now. In a parallel probability. In another thread of the quantum field. That version of you is already living the life that feels impossible from where you're standing today. And here's the secret that changes everything. You don't have to become that version. You just have to tune into the frequency where that version already exists. This is where quantum physics and spirituality become the same language. In the quantum field, all possibilities exist simultaneously. The version of you that's stuck in grief and loss, that's one timeline. But the version of you that has already integrated this experience, that has already transformed the pain into power, that's already living the life you dream of, that version exists too, right now, in this moment. Not in some distant future you have to work toward. It exists as a potential reality that's just as real as the one you're currently experiencing. And here's where it gets profound. Losing everything is what makes you available to shift timelines. As long as you're holding on to the old life, the old identity, the old story, you're anchored to that timeline. You're locked into a specific trajectory. But the moment everything falls apart, the moment you have nothing left to hold on to, you become fluid, malleable, open. And in that openness, in that terrifying, beautiful void, you have access to possibilities that were never available to the old version of you. This is quantum physics stressed in spiritual language. In the quantum field, all possibilities exist simultaneously. Every version of your life, every timeline, every potential reality, it's all already there, waiting. And what determines which one you experience? Your frequency, your state of consciousness, the story you're telling yourself about who you are. So when you lose everything, when all those old structures collapse, what you're really experiencing is a timeline shift. The life you were living, the future you thought you were heading toward, that was one probability, one potential reality out of infinite possibilities. But it wasn't the highest one available to you. It was just the one that matched who you used to be. Now your consciousness has expanded. You've asked deeper questions. You've felt the stirring of something more. And the moment you do that, the moment you even begin to wonder if there's a bigger story for your life, you send a signal out into the quantum field, and the universe responds. Not with words, but with circumstances. It starts to collapse the timelines that no longer serve your evolution and opens pathways to the ones that do. But here's the part that makes it so painful. There's a gap, a space between who you were and who you're becoming, and in that space nothing makes sense. You can't go back to the old life. It doesn't fit anymore, but you can't see the new one yet either. You're in the void, the in-between, the quantum field of infinite possibility where nothing is solid yet. And this is where most people panic, because the mind hates the void. It hates uncertainty. It wants to know what's next, wants to control the outcome, wants to rebuild immediately. But the soul knows this void is sacred. This is where magic happens. This is where you stop living from memory and start living from imagination. This is where you shift timelines. And I'm going to explain exactly what that means, because understanding this changes everything. In quantum physics, there's a principle called superposition. It means that a particle exists in all possible states simultaneously until it's observed. The moment you observe it, the waveform collapses into one specific reality. Your life works the same way. Right now, in this moment of loss, in this space where everything familiar has dissolved, you exist in a state of infinite potential. There are multiple versions of your future available to you. Multiple timelines, multiple outcomes, multiple yous. And the one that collapses into your reality depends entirely on where you place your attention, your belief, your energy. When you had the relationship, the job, the identity, you were living in one specific timeline. A timeline where that version of you made sense. But the moment those things dissolved, you didn't just lose something, you were ejected from that timeline entirely. And right now, in this in-between space, you're standing at a quantum crossroads. There are infinite versions of your future available to you right now, infinite timelines, and the one you collapse into depends entirely on the frequency you choose in this moment of emptiness. Most people, when they lose everything, they panic. They try to rebuild the same life as fast as possible, get back into a relationship that looks like the last one. Find a job that feels familiar, surround themselves with people who reflect the old identity. And they end up right back where they started, wondering why the same patterns keep repeating. But you're different. You're here because somewhere deep inside, you know this moment is sacred. You know this isn't about going back. It's about going forward into something you can't even see yet. And here's where quantum physics meets spiritual awakening in the most beautiful way. In quantum mechanics, there's a principle called superposition. It means that a particle exists in all possible states simultaneously until the moment it's observed. And the act of observation, the act of focused consciousness, collapses it into one specific reality. You with me so far? Now apply that to your life. Right now, in this moment of loss, in this space where everything feels uncertain and undefined, you are in a state of quantum potential. The old life has collapsed. The new one hasn't solidified yet. And that means you are standing in the most powerful creative space that exists, the void, the field of infinite possibility. Every version of your future exists right now as a potential timeline. The version where you stay small, play it safe, rebuild the same life you just lost, and the version where you surrender to the transformation, trust the process, and allow yourself to be reconfigured into alignment with your highest path. Both exist simultaneously in the quantum field. And the one that collapses into your reality depends entirely on where you place your attention, your energy, your belief. This is the part most people miss. They think losing everything means starting over from zero. But quantum physics shows us something different. It shows us that reality isn't fixed, it's fluid, malleable, responsive to consciousness. And when your old reality falls apart, you're not left with nothing. You're left with infinite potential, pure possibility, a blank canvas where any timeline can emerge. And that's exactly what we're going to explore next, how to consciously choose which reality you collapse into, and how to align with the version of you that's already living it. So how do you actually do this? How do you shift from the timeline of pain and loss into the timeline where you're already healed, already aligned, already living the life your soul came here for? The answer is simpler than you think, but it requires something most people aren't willing to give: full surrender. Not the kind of surrender that means giving up, but the kind that means giving in, letting go of control, stopping the fight against what is. Because here's what's happening energetically when you resist loss. You're trying to hold two timelines at once. You're trying to stay loyal to a version of your life that the universe has already closed the door on, while simultaneously being pulled toward a new one. And that split, that's where all the suffering lives. Resistance is what creates pain, not the loss itself. The loss is neutral. It's just change, just transition, just energy rearranging itself. But when you resist it, when you grip onto what's dissolving, when you keep looking back at what was, that's when it hurts. Because you're trying to exist in two timelines at once. You're trying to hold on to a reality that your soul has already left. So the first step in aligning with the version of you that's already awake, already free, already living in flow, you have to let the old timeline go. Completely. Not just physically, but energetically. You have to stop replaying the past in your mind. Stop wondering what you could have done differently. Stop checking their social media, refreshing job boards that look like the old life, reaching out to people who only knew the old you. Because every time you do that, you're sending a signal to the quantum field that says, I still belong to that reality. And the universe, being the loyal mirror that it is, will keep reflecting it back to you in different forms. Same lesson, different face. But when you truly let go, and I mean energetically let go, not just mentally accept it, you become available for a completely different timeline to emerge. So how do you do that? How do you align with the version of you that's already living the awakened life, the aligned life, the life that feels like home? First, you have to understand this. That version of you isn't something you create. It already exists. In quantum terms, it's already collapsed in another timeline. And what you're doing right now isn't manifesting it from scratch. You're tuning into the frequency where it already is. Think of it like this. Imagine there are 1,000 radio stations broadcasting simultaneously. They're all playing different songs, different frequencies, different realities. When you lose everything, when your life falls apart, it's like the station you were tuned into suddenly goes silent. And in that silence, you have a choice. You can frantically try to find that same station again, the same song, the same static-filled frequency you were on before, or you can slowly, intentionally turn the dial to a completely different station, one that's been broadcasting this whole time, but you couldn't hear it because you were so locked into the old channel. That's what losing everything does. It forces you to change the station. Your higher self, the version of you that exists beyond time, beyond this single lifetime, the part of you that chose to be here, it's been trying to reach you for a long time, sending signs, synchronicities, whispers in the form of intuition. Maybe you felt it as restlessness, a sense that something was off, even when everything looked fine on paper. Maybe you ignored it. Maybe you tried to push through, convinced yourself you could make it work. But your soul doesn't negotiate. When it's time to evolve, it will dismantle everything that keeps you small. And that's what this moment is. This loss, this emptying out, this painful, beautiful dissolution. It's your soul breaking you free. So how do you align with the version of you that's already living the life you're meant for? How do you shift from the timeline of loss into the timeline of emergence? It starts with one radical act. Stop trying to go back. Most people, when they lose everything, spend all their energy trying to return to what was. They want the relationship back. They want the old job back. They want the comfort of the familiar identity. And I understand that impulse. The mind craves certainty. It wants to know what's next. It wants to rebuild immediately. But here's the truth. You can't go back. Not because you failed, but because you've already outgrown that reality. Your consciousness has expanded, and you can't fit back into a smaller version of yourself, no matter how hard you try. And honestly, that's the greatest gift the universe could give you. Because here's what most people don't realize. The old life wasn't taken from you. You outgrew it. Your soul expanded, and the circumstances of your life had to dissolve to make space for what's trying to come through. So the question isn't, how do I get back to normal? The question is, who am I becoming now that the old me no longer exists? And that question, that shift in focus, is what begins to align you with the version of yourself that's already awake. The version that already knows why this happened. The version that's already living in alignment with your soul's deepest purpose. Because here's the truth. That version of you isn't waiting for you in the future. It already exists. Right now. In the quantum field. In a parallel timeline. In a state of consciousness that's available to you the moment you stop resisting what's falling apart and start aligning with what's trying to emerge. So how do you do that? How do you stop living from the frequency of loss and start living from the frequency of the version of you that's already free, already aligned, already awake? First, you have to understand something crucial. Your higher self, the version of you that exists beyond time, beyond this physical dimension, already knows how this story ends, and it's beautiful. The part of you that's panicking right now, the part that's afraid and confused and grieving, that's the human you. The you that's identified with the physical world, with time, with linear cause and effect. But there's another you, a version of you that exists beyond time, beyond this dimension. Some people call it your higher self. Some call it your soul. Some call it the observer, the witness, the consciousness behind the identity. And that part of you, it's not worried, it's not confused. It knows exactly what's happening. It orchestrated this entire collapse because it knew that the life you were living was too small for what you came here to do. So here's the quantum question that changes everything. What if this loss isn't happening to you, but for you? What if your higher self, the version of you that exists beyond time and space, the version that can see all the timelines laid out like threads, what if that version of you chose this moment, chose this breakdown, chose this initiation, because it knew this was the only way to get you off the timeline you were on and onto the one you're meant for? Think about it. If everything had stayed comfortable, if the relationship hadn't ended, if the job hadn't dissolved, if the move hadn't happened, would you have ever questioned anything? Would you have ever stopped and asked, is this really it? Is this really who I am? Probably not. You would have stayed on autopilot, living a life that looked fine on the outside, but felt hollow on the inside. And your soul knew that. So it pressed the reset button. Losing everything isn't a punishment. It's a liberation. It's the universe saying, you're ready now. You're ready to stop living the script someone else wrote for you and start living from the truth of who you actually are. Mouse, and here's the quantum shift I promised you. The moment you stop resisting the collapse, the moment you stop trying to rebuild what was, the moment you turn toward the void and say, okay, I trust this, that's when the new timeline locks in. That's when the version of you that's already aligned, already awake, already living in flow, that's when it collapses from potential into reality. But it requires one thing most people aren't willing to do. You have to let the old you die completely. No half measures, no, I'll keep one foot in the past, just in case. Full surrender, full trust, full leap into the unknown. And I know how terrifying that sounds. But here's the truth. You've already survived the hardest part. Everything already fell apart. You're already in the void. The only question now is, are you going to use this void to rebuild the same life, or are you going to let it birth something entirely new? So let's bring this into your body. Let's make this real. Because understanding this intellectually is one thing, but embodying it, living it, that's where the transformation actually happens. I want you to try something right now. Wherever you are, whatever you're doing, just pause for a moment. Take a breath. A real one, not the shallow breath you've been surviving on, a deep one that reaches all the way down into the place where the grief lives. And as you breathe, I want you to feel into the emptiness. Not run from it, not try to fill it. Just feel it. That space where something used to be. That hollow ache in your chest. That disorienting sense of, I don't know who I am anymore. Feel it. Let it be there. Because that emptiness, that's not the problem. That's the portal. In spiritual traditions across the world, the void is considered sacred. It's the womb of creation. It's the space where everything is born. But in our modern world, we're terrified of emptiness. We're taught to fill every moment, distract ourselves, stay busy, numb out. And when loss creates a sudden, unavoidable void in our lives, we panic. We think something's wrong. We think we need to fix it immediately. But what if you didn't? What if Just for a moment, you allowed yourself to simply exist in the not knowing. Here's a simple practice you can do today, right now, to begin aligning with the timeline where you're already free, already whole, already living from your soul's truth. Close your eyes, or if you can't right now, just soften your gaze. Take 3 deep breaths. With each exhale, let yourself feel the weight of what you've been carrying, the grief, the confusion, the fear of what comes next. Don't push it away. Just acknowledge it. Yes, this is here. Yes, this is real. Now here's the shift. I want you to imagine, just for a moment, that everything that fell apart perfectly. That there's a version of you somewhere in the quantum field that's looking back at this exact moment and saying, thank God that happened. That was the moment everything changed. Can you feel that possibility? Even if it seems impossible right now, even if your mind wants to argue with it, can you feel the potential of it? The timeline where this loss was actually the beginning of everything you've been asking for. That feeling, that faint whisper of possibility, that's the frequency of your higher self. That's the version of you that already knows how this ends. And every time you touch that feeling, even for a second, you're tuning the dial. You're shifting from the timeline of victimhood into the timeline of transformation. Now here's the daily practice that will anchor this shift. Every morning, before you do anything else, before you check your phone or replay yesterday's pain, I want you to ask yourself one question. Who is the version of me that's already free from this? And how would that version of me move through today? Not who you were, not who you think you should be, but the version of you that's already integrated this loss, already alchemized it, already stepped into the life that's waiting on the other side. How would that version of you show up today? Would they scroll through their ex's photos? Would they apply for the same type of job they just lost? Would they shrink back into old patterns because they're familiar? Or would they move differently, speak differently, choose differently? You don't have to know the big picture. You don't have to have the whole future mapped out. You just have to ask, what would the aligned version of me do right now, in this moment? And then do that. Even if it's small. Even if it's just choosing to go for a walk instead of spiraling. Even if it's unfollowing that person who keeps you tethered to the past. Even if it's saying no to something that feels like settling. Every small choice in alignment is a vote for the new timeline. Every moment you choose from the frequency of the awakened you, you're collapsing that reality closer and closer into your physical experience. Here's another practice. And this one might feel a little strange, but trust me, it's powerful. I want you to start talking to the version of you that's 6 months from now. The version that's already on the other side of this. Close your eyes and imagine them. What do they look like? How do they carry themselves? What's the energy around them? And here's the key question. What would they want to tell you right now? Sit with that. Listen. Because that version of you, the one who's already integrated this loss, who's already living in alignment, they're not some distant fantasy. They're a real probability in the quantum field. And the more you connect with them, the more you tune into their frequency, the faster you collapse into that timeline. You might hear things like, stop looking back, it's not there anymore. Or trust this emptiness, something incredible is coming. Or maybe just a feeling, a sense of calm. A knowing that even though you can't see it yet, everything is rearranging itself in your favor. And here's the thing about synchronicities, those strange coincidences that keep happening to you, the repeating numbers, the random messages that feel like they were meant for you, the songs that play at the exact right moment. Those aren't accidents. Those are your higher self confirming, yes, you're on the right path. Yes, I'm here with you. Yes, this is all part of the plan. So start paying attention. Start documenting them. Every time something feels too perfectly timed to be coincidence, write it down. Because those moments are proof that you're not alone in this. They're proof that there's an intelligence guiding you, even when your human mind can't see the full picture yet. And finally, And this is maybe the most important part. Start practicing the art of letting the old story go. You know the story I'm talking about. The one you keep telling yourself about what happened, about why it happened, about what it means about you. That story where you're the victim, or the failure, or the one who got left behind. That story keeps you locked in the old timeline. So here's what I want you to do. Every time you catch yourself replaying that story, stop, take a breath, and say this out loud if you can. That was one version of the story, but it's not the only one, and it's not the one I'm choosing anymore. Then ask yourself, what's the version of this story where I'm not broken, where this wasn't a mistake, where this was exactly what needed to happen for me to become who I'm meant to be? You don't have to believe it fully yet. You just have to be willing to try on a different narrative, because the story you tell yourself about your life becomes the frequency you broadcast, and the frequency you broadcast becomes the reality you experience. This is how you align with the version of your soul that's already awake, not through force, not through perfection, but through small daily choices to tune into a different frequency, to ask different questions, to stop reinforcing the old timeline and start collapsing the new one. And if this feels hard, if some days you can't do it, if you find yourself back in the grief and the confusion, that's okay. You're human. This is a process, not a light switch. But every time you come back to the practice, every time you choose alignment over resistance, you're building momentum. You're shifting timelines. You're becoming the version of you that's already free. So here we are, at the end of this video, but really at the beginning of something much bigger for you. If you stayed with me until this moment, it's because something in you recognizes the truth of what we've been exploring together. You're not here by accident. This video found you, or maybe you found it, at exactly the right time. Because that's how the universe works when you're in the process of awakening. Everything becomes a message. Everything becomes a mirror. And here's the insight I promised you at the very beginning, the one I saved for those who would stay until the end. Losing everything wasn't the universe taking things away from you. It was the universe removing everything that was blocking you from receiving what you've been asking for all along. Every prayer you've whispered in the dark, every moment you've looked up at the stars and wondered, there has to be more than this. Every time your soul stirred with the knowing that you're meant for something deeper, something truer, something more aligned, the universe heard all of it. And this moment, this painful, disorienting, beautiful collapse, this is the answer. Not the answer you expected, not the answer your mind wanted, but the answer your soul required. Because you can't step into a new timeline while holding on to the old one. You can't birth a new version of yourself while clinging to who you used to be. And you can't become who you're meant to be while playing it safe in a life that was never truly yours. So the universe did what it does best. It created space. It cleared the path. It removed everything that was built on the frequency of the old you, so the new you, the real you, the awakened you, the you that's been waiting beneath all the conditioning and fear, could finally emerge. And yes, it hurts. Yes, it's terrifying. Yes, there are days when you'll question everything and wonder if you'll ever feel whole again. But I promise you this, on the other side of this void, there's a life waiting for you that's more beautiful, more authentic, more aligned than anything you left behind. A life where you don't have to pretend, where you don't have to shrink, where you finally get to be all of who you are. This video ends here, but the process it awakened in you, that's just beginning. And you don't have to walk it alone. If this content resonated with you, it was not by chance. It reflects where your soul is right now, at a crossroads between the life that is ending and the one that is quietly beginning to unfold. If you felt seen, held, or guided in any way, honor this moment of awareness with a small, concrete action. Consider subscribing to this channel. not as a number, but as a commitment to your own journey. This space exists as a portal for those moving through new beginnings, losses, awakenings, and inner realignments. Each new video is another piece of the puzzle you are assembling within yourself. And if you feel called to share, leave in the comments a recent synchronicity you experienced or a phrase that captures what this moment means to you. This is not just interaction, it is co-creation. It is your energy intertwining with that of other seekers who have also chosen to awaken. So now, before moving on to the next video, pause for a moment. Place your hand on your chest. Feel everything that has fallen away and everything that is quietly being born. And when it feels true for you, go to the comments and write, "I let go." This may be the exact point where your new timeline begins.